Well, everyone, we get to talk about one of my most favorite consoles of all time, which is actually the Xbox One S. Now, this was a very interesting console because I think this was the first Xbox One that I ever owned and one of the first Xboxes that I bought after my original Xbox 360. I mean, after the Xbox 360, that was a very good console. I love that console a lot, but then I never really played too many Xbox consoles. But then I did buy the Xbox One S, I think back in 2019, and I had a very good time with this particular device. Even at that time, it felt so futuristic, and we did end up getting the successor of that console the year after, but I still look at the Xbox One S as being such a cool console, and out of all the consoles I think I've ever owned, I think the Xbox One S is my favorite design console of all time. Like, Microsoft nailed the design of this thing. I don't know how many other people agree with that, but I really love this like white color going around with it. You had that disc tray, had a lot of stuff going on for this particular console. And I, for one, was a massive fan of this particular device, just the way it looked. Like, I loved it. Now, I will always say, if you have all the money in the world, I would just recommend buying the Xbox Series S or the Xbox Series X. Don't even buy the Series S. Go for the Series X because that one is the one that's going to be giving you just better capability, like more power, everything like that. You are probably better off going down that direction rather than going down something like, the Xbox, One S in 2024, to be honest. But I will say, if you are on a budget, or if you are looking to buy a console, maybe a collector's item, or let's say you don't even have an Xbox and you're just trying to get into the ecosystem at all, I kind of do think an Xbox One S could be a decent entry point into that whole entire ecosystem. And I do think that in and of itself is a very, very cool thing. And I actually love having this type of console because that in and of itself is just such a cool thing going on here. So without a doubt, I will definitely tell you the Xbox One S, there's a lot to say. So let's get started on the outside. With the outside, you are getting your standard, type of build. It's nothing crazy, but I love this design. That black on white with that matte finish and it's like rectangular design is just so beautiful. It almost looks like an art piece to me, if I'm being honest. This in and of itself is just one of my most favorite things going on for this particular device. And that is something that I love a lot. Every time I look at this particular console, I just get so happy about it because it really is one of my most favorite things going on for this particular device. Now, I will also say you are getting that disc tray on the front of this particular console, which is very cool. So you can always just go through and click on that button to eject that disc tray if you want to. You can add in a disc, and the reason why I even bring that up is because the Series S does not have a disc tray. So that can be kind of a problem probably for some people, because if you are going through and if you are essentially, trying to add in a disc tray or whatever, play some used games, you won't have that type of capability on the Series S. And if Microsoft eventually does remove that disc tray for all the consoles, well, that's going to be kind of a problem. So, if you are wanting to play these older type of generation games, just keep in mind that if you are wanting to do that, you will have to buy one of the newer consoles or like the Series X, but the One S is giving you that disc tray completely built in, which again is a very nice add-on for this particular device. So that right there is a very, very cool thing going on for this particular console in and of itself. You are also getting that USB, port on the front of this console, which again is very cool. Nothing else really on the sides. You do have the vent at the very top as well. On the back side, you are getting another USB port, an AC adapter, Ethernet port, which you're also getting 2 HDMI ports. Now, this is something they did remove on the latest generation of the Series S and the Series X, but I actually like having the capability of having 2 HDMI ports. And the reason for this is because with those HDMI ports, you might be wondering even why that's even important. Well, you essentially get HDMI in and HDMI out. So what this means is basically if you go ahead and plug in like a standard like Xbox Series S into your, into your TV, you only have one HDMI port. So it plugs in from your HDMI from your Xbox and plugs into your monitor, and that's it. But what this other HDMI port allows you to do is essentially have the Xbox act almost like as a pass-through, and you are essentially able to go ahead, plug in another HDMI port device straight into your Xbox, and you can actually output it. So let's say your monitor only had one HDMI port, well, you could actually go ahead and have almost like 2 HDMI ports if you just use your Xbox to, pass through that particular port. This was a very cool thing, and that was something I actually liked a lot about this particular console. Like, if I was going to go through and actually pick up this type of console, that was something that was actually very awesome for me, because I wouldn't have to deal with that type of issue of like having to unplug and plug things over and over again. And that was actually a really nice touch for the Xbox One S. And I guess instead of buying an HDMI splitter, you could just use this. And it was actually a very, very cool thing. I knew some people who had like a Nintendo Switch, they would use the One S as a pass-through. And again, it was a very cool thing going on here. So that in and of itself, honestly, gets a thumbs up for me as well. Now, on top of that, like I said, the rest of the console holds up well, although it's a little bit thicker maybe than some other consoles nowadays, at least for the size of, what you're getting here. I think this thing was really cool, and it definitely gets a thumbs up for me. I also like the controller of this console a lot. I like the Series S controller, like don't get me wrong, but there was just something about the Xbox One S controller, the white controller with the black little portion at the top, that I liked a lot. I don't know why I like these like random things, but this was something that was actually very, very cool that I actually liked a lot about this particular console as well. And if I was just going to go ahead and go through and basically just use this particular console like that, that was something that was very cool going on here as well. So this in and of itself was another really cool thing going on for this particular console. So the controller feels nice. You can still use this controller if you want to go ahead and basically just, plug in and play with other things. And you can do a lot of other things here too. Like it's a very, very good console when it comes down to it. But this isn't even touching the gaming library of this particular device. This again is one of my most favorite things going on for this particular console too. Like this particular console is basically giving you a massive library of games that you can basically play. So all the way from the Xbox, actually some original Xbox One games I think you can play here too, or the original Xbox games, but the Xbox 360 games that you have, the Xbox One games that you have, and this is a very cool thing going on for this particular device, and that is something I like a lot about this particular console from that perspective. But the other thing too that I actually like a lot about this particular device as well is that with the Xbox One, the whole entire Xbox Ones, the really cool thing here is that the games that you can get for this console are so cheap. Like they are not that expensive. They are very, very cheap, games now. And this in and of itself is something I actually like a lot about this particular device, because you don't have to go through and essentially have to spend like a bunch of money on all these different games and all this other stuff. You don't have to do that here. Like it is a fairly cheap functioning, console. And this again is something that I actually like a lot about this particular device. So again, that is something I love. If you're going to go through and buy some sort of console, you don't have to, it's one thing when you're buying the Xbox Series S or X, because like you have to spend that much money on the console. They have to spend that much money on the games as well, which can be kind of annoying for a lot of people. With me, with the Xbox One S, you don't really have to deal with that, which I think is a really important thing. And I think that in and of itself is a very, very important thing to keep in mind here. So I fundamentally agree that the Xbox One S is probably one of the better consoles you can buy if you're on a budget and if you want to go and have a gaming console that also has a massive gaming library before it that you can play. The only issue I have with the Xbox, One S is that there's not really too many games being developed for it. It's not going to last forever. And I could totally see a lot of people wanting to switch over from this particular console to a different console at some point. Like, there's not that much future ahead of the Xbox One S. If you're planning on buying this particular device, like I said before, I can see a lot of people maybe being like, okay, is there a different console that I can buy or something like that at some point sooner than later. But I will tell you, with the Xbox One S, there's still a lot of love that this console has, and there's still a lot of capability that this console has too. Like, you're not really in this situation where this console is like in a terrible situation or anything like that. And I do think that's something that's super important to keep in mind with this particular device. So overall, what I will definitely tell you is that I love the Xbox One S. It's one of my most favorite consoles of all time. And if I were to go and recommend a console to people, it probably would be this one, because it doesn't really get that much better than this for this generation of console unless you want to go for the One X. I would definitely go for the Series S or X if you have the money. But I think the One S is a very good console and I couldn't recommend it enough. So that pretty much covers it up there. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that will mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.